Excellent. We're live. We're live and kicking. Welcome, everyone. I like to call this my little lunch and learn. Obviously, if you're listening on the podcast, it might not be lunchtime, but I like to coin the phrase lunch and learn. And today we're joined by Fiona from Midpoint for Women. How are you doing, Fiona?
I'm very good. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming back on the onto the group and chatting to us. Now, some people might be listening to this or watching this or listening on the podcast, think, "Hold on, this is a business." This is a business group. What's going on here? Why is Bill talking to Fiona today? Well, I've been inspired to have you on because we're going to be talking about Midpoint for Women and what you do and how you help women within sort of their menopause, perimenopause, and stuff like that. But I was inspired because one, it's kind of something that we're affected in our own family by at the moment. I don't know if affected is the right word, but you can always correct me. But also I've got friends and clients now that are going through these symptoms of menopause and perimenopause. So I wanted to get you into the group just to give us some help and advice and tell us your experience and how you help people. So welcome back. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.
Hope so you can introduce yourself and let everyone know what you do and how you do it.
Yeah. Hi everybody. So my name is Fiona Gary. I'm founder of Midpoint for Women. So I am a physical training instructor for the last 22 years, and I work for the Metropolitan Police as a civilian member of staff. And about 3 years ago, towards the latter part of lockdown, I started noticing some major changes in myself, my personality, I was getting symptoms. I'm going to say noticing things. My body, my brain, everything starting to go a little bit weird. And I didn't know why. And if you think about it, back 3 years, there was hardly anything in the media. There was a little bit, but there was hardly anything in the media around menopause, perimenopause, etc., etc. All the changes that happen. And it was very taboo. It's obviously changed massively over the last few years, but it's still very stigmatized in many companies and communities. And so I didn't know what to do myself, and I obviously working in a male-dominated environment made things really, really tricky, and I didn't want to tell anybody. And I, as a physical training instructor, you can imagine my whole life has been around sport, and I stopped exercising for 12 months, which is unheard of. And I basically thought, what's going on? I put weight on, I had brain fog. And because of that, I set up Midpoint for Women. It started as just a group of friends who started talking about things, and we all realised we were all in the same boat, yet nobody was talking to each other. And then it became a kind of a bit of a fitness program amongst women who were all going through that process. And then it became a much bigger group of women contributing. So we help around nutrition, fitness, and it's not fitness to the point of elite level fitness. It's just getting people active and making them realise the positive impact that can have. I run a 12-week program, and I do deliver workshops to organisations, community groups, etc., all across the country in the UK.
Cool. So I've had a few clients over the last year or so, and like you're saying, you start to notice some changes, and sometimes clients have kind of disappeared and they've stopped. They've stopped coming into the group. They've stopped talking to the group and talking to me, and I've gone to them and sort of asked them what's going on and how are they, and they're like, "I'll tell you, Bill, I've been knocked for six by by what I now realise is perimenopause, or it's probably perimenopause at their ages." And it's interesting at how, although like you said, the media is starting to pick up on this message now, and they're starting to talk about it more, but people are still coming towards this stage of life, and they're still quite surprised and don't understand exactly what's going on. Kind of creeps up on them, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely. And it can be very unnerving because I know for sure that I went from really confident out there, could stand in front of 100 people and not even think about it, to then suddenly really anxious about doing such a thing. And, and that anxiety becomes because of the brain fog. What if I stand there and forget everything I'm doing? If I completely went blank, how bad does that look? So therefore, if you're in a job role, or you're in a position where that's part of your job, an expectation of you. Or even, if you're a mum at home, a mum or a wife at home, and you completely forget, you've gone shopping and you've come back. I'm not saying it's only a female role, just for the record, but if you've gone shopping and you've come back and you've forgotten half of the stuff on the list, or you haven't even got anything in for dinner, the kids or the partner, whoever that might be, may turn around and say, well, didn't you go shopping today? And then you feel stupid. So there's an element where we shut ourselves. There is an element some people will shut themselves away, and that might be why you sometimes find that people detach themselves a little bit, because they don't want to make mistakes or they don't want to look silly. And I think people if they're in a job where, I know obviously your group is predominantly dog groomers and stuff, but imagine being a groomer and somebody comes in with their dog and you do their dog every 4 weeks or whatever it might be, and it's kind of like, yeah, just the same, and they walk off and you do something completely different that you should have done. I mean, the owner will come back. I used to have a spaniel. If I'd come back and my spaniel was clipped to within an inch of her life, then I'd have been devastated, because I wanted her to have the little frilly bits on the back of her legs, etc. So it can be really hard for women. But equally, it's hard for the guys at home or the partner at home. I have a female partner, so it's equally hard for her as well, which is why raising that awareness, increasing communication is so important.
Yeah, and then perhaps we'll talk about that in a minute, because it's certainly something that I think actually having you, we did a talk like this a year or so ago, and having that in the back of my head, and having looked at your website and looked at the program that you offer, and the information you put out there, certainly helped me to understand when things at home are a little bit different. And it's like when your partner or your other half comes to you and says, look, I feel a lot of anxiety, or I really, my confidence, like you were saying, my confidence really dipped. And it's like, I start to understand what's going on, and maybe there is a reason why. Being a man, I like to fix things, but I like to make things right, but it's not always that easy, is it?
No, and do you know what? You hit the nail on the head there. Men are fixers. In the main, men are fixers. And it's something that you can't fix. But what you can do is just become empathetic and understanding and have a bit of an awareness. I get men at work coming to me, even though it's not my job at work. They catch me at break. If I'm having a cup of tea or whatever, they'll catch me and say, Fiona, I really don't know what's going on with my wife or my sister, and they'll ask me questions. And then when I give them a quick explanation, or I say, look, can you see me at dinner, because then I can have a proper chat with you. And I have a chat with them, and they go, yeah, that's it. And I'm like, but they don't understand. And I think, yeah, but she probably doesn't understand what she's going through either. So therefore, if you don't, I always say to people, if you don't communicate, even though it's sometimes a difficult communication, if you don't communicate, there ends up a wedge in between you, which usually is probably because there's been children involved or work commitments, etc. But the less you do to stop the wedge getting bigger, the harder, the more devastating that potentially could be. I mean, the divorce rates between the ages of 45 and 55 is actually quite high. And you could say, is that because kids have grown up and maybe leaving home? Is that because it's the same time when men are doing some changes, body changes, and women are changing a little bit as well, and it's causing some issues?
Yeah, and I've written some notes here. We'll go through some stuff like that, because, maybe now that we're doing this live in this podcast, if someone is worried about speaking to their other half or family or partner, we'll go and listen to this, and perhaps we'll cover some points and give people some understanding. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if anybody was watching, or hopefully somebody watches it, if you actually go on to, if you're obviously on Facebook, so if you follow me on Midpoint for Women, so you'll put it in the chat or whatever. If you check out the Facebook page, the public page, there's actually in the featured, there's actually a 40-minute recording that I did, although I did it like 18 months ago. It's all about libido and sex, and I know that sounds really weird, but I had a chat with this lady, just off the sort of record chat for 40 minutes. And it's all about, because we are animals and we want physical contact with people. And if you're not getting anything back, you're getting no sort of, it could be that there's something going on with her. And if there's something going on with her body that she's too embarrassed or too ashamed to say, and her confidence starts to drop or whatever it might be, she's then not going to say to you, yeah, okay, I want to be intimate with you. But then it's how does a man or a female partner have that conversation? And I actually give that 40-minute talk on Zoom to a load of guys at work, and just said to them, they're over 45, take a listen, watch it on your own, and then if you feel it's appropriate, let your other half listen to it. And they were like, oh my God, there's no way I could give that to my other half. And I said, but if you say the girl at work, just make it casual, the girl at work's giving this to all the boys or the men to listen to and pass on. I said, blame me. I said, I bet some of them watch it and learn something.
No, you and yourself and Midpoint for Women was certainly instrumental or part of the conversation starter for me and my other half. Maybe we should look at this. If this is what's, I recognise some of the signs and symptoms. I'm sure she did as well. But maybe we should have a look at this. And here's the website. Have a look. But the issue that I found, or what surprised me, was going to a GP. It's just not that simple. And I remember contacting you, didn't I, of saying, right, we need to go and see a GP. What do you say? Because there's no test. There's no test, is there?
No, I mean, obviously there's a lot more awareness around menopause now. But we just need to clarify. We obviously have normal menstrual cycle. You have perimenopause, which can be anything between 6 months, 10 years. It could be even longer. The whole process can be years and years, which is why we've got to get a grip of it. Make some changes so it doesn't devastate your lives, and that you can get strategies to try and help with some of the symptoms, because otherwise so much will go wrong. So that's why recognising it and then dealing with it would be much better, okay, proactive. Perimenopause is obviously where you get potentially all the symptoms. Now, when I first started doing this 3 years ago, was maybe 34 symptoms. There's now attributing 50 odd symptoms to it. And it's because estrogen, progesterone and testosterone, the three hormones that are affected by going through the menopause, are all over your body. They affect every single part of your body. So if you get thinning hair and you're somebody that pulls as a female or a guy, but you pull your hair back really tight, you're breaking the follicles in your hairline, because this is getting weaker because of the hormone changes. And then people say, oh, my hair's thinning or it's dropping out. And it's potentially because you're pulling your hair back so tight. So just take it off a little bit, not your hair, but take the pressure off. And it's, again, if you can deal with those things, and those symptoms can last years. Some people might just have one or two. I mean, like in the last 5 weeks, I've started getting hot flashes. I haven't had them for 2.5 years. Now they might go away. And again, it's a moving road. It's not something that's just going to be black and white, and this is your 2 symptoms or this is your 5 symptoms. It can be changing throughout these years of process. But equally, like you say, Bill, that you go to GP, you've actually got to go with the information. So you better to go on to get a check sheet of different symptoms, mark them off, maybe track it for about 3 months to 6 months, then go to your GP and say, right, I've tracked this. This is where I'm at. I would highly recommend. This is not a medical chat, by the way. It's just an awareness conversation, and hopefully it will help. But don't just diagnose yourself and say, oh, that's me, I'm obviously perimenopausal, because there are a couple of health issues that are quite serious. In fact, you must go to the GP and say the symptoms, and try, if you can, try and get a blood test for thyroid, because it presents exactly the same symptoms as going through the perimenopause. So it's really important not to just diagnose yourself. So get your information, then go to your GP and say, look, because you only get, in the UK, you only get 10 minutes an appointment. That's if you're lucky to get an appointment. Because if you don't go with the information, many doctors don't have a clue. And I'm not being disrespectful to people, but it affects 51% of the population, and every woman will go through it. Every trans man will also go through it if they've not fully transitioned, and also people who identify as non-binary. We have to be mindful of all those categories. So,
I've got underactive thyroid, and I often get periods of brain fog, and I always blame it on that. Get a blood test, and it's normal. I'm like, damn it. but you're absolutely right. And the blood tests, they don't want to pay for the blood test. They go, okay, you've got symptoms. And the reason just so you know, the reason why the blood test isn't necessarily accurate for the hormone side is because it's just one day in that cycle.
And therefore, that one day, this cycle, it might be in a little bit of a peak, it might be in a bit of a trough. So it's really inaccurate. But if you're under 40 in the UK, if you're under 40, they will still tend to do, under 45, they will tend to do a blood test. But again, it's quite inaccurate. So the actual symptoms tracker is probably better, but not to diagnose yourself. Still go to your GP, say what's what, because at least then it's on record. You can get a thyroid check, and make sure there's nothing else untoward going on. I had somebody the other day on a podcast I did, or a webinar, and she said that that was when she found out she actually had cancer, because there were some symptoms, and she effectively could have diagnosed herself with perimenopausal symptoms, but sensibly went to the GP, and actually, scarily, it actually turned out to be something much more sinister, as well as perimenopause, bless her. So, but yeah, so it's very important to do that.
And we reached out to you when we were sort of thinking about this, and I think you gave us, or you directed us to the check sheet. We did do that. We went to the GP, or my wife went to the GP, and the first one we saw was it was no good. Say, I don't know how to say it. It was dismissed or wasn't dealt with. But then quite often GPs have kind of doctors that specialize or have more knowledge. So we asked to speak to someone regarding women's health and menopause, and we got an appointment with a specific GP that quite often deals with these sort of signs and symptoms. And that's when they said, yeah, let's get you started on some treatment. So
I mean, it is a bit of a postcode lottery. It's like many things, it's postcode lottery. I know I had to go and have a Mirena coil fitted earlier in the year because the bleeding just couldn't control it. And when I went to the women's clinic to go and have the coil fitted, I know it's very personal, but this is what it's all about. It's about talking about, because if we can't talk about it openly and freely, then we're not going to be getting anywhere. So, but the female doctor, she was absolutely lovely. Obviously, she did the procedure fine. She's writing out my paperwork, and she said, "Now, do you understand what perimenopause is?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "Actually," and I told her what I did. And she slid her chair along, because initially she's just sitting at the computer typing out, talking to me while she's typing. She slid her chair along, face to face with me. "Can you tell me what the program is?" And I told her what it was, and she said, "Wow." She goes, "Would you be willing to come into the surgery and have a conversation with the partners? Because maybe it's something we could have at the surgery as an option for low-level anxiety, low-level mental health, and obviously perimenopause well-being side for the clinic." I said, "Yeah, give me a shout." And I was kind of a bit blasé about it, because I kind of was a bit shocked that as a women's clinic, they didn't have anything. And again, I kind of was like thinking, wow, I just came here to have a Mirena coil fitted. And now, but it shows that there is a huge lack of resources. You can obviously obviously you did go through the GP and got to a clinic. You can obviously go through various private organisations like the Newson in the UK. The Newson clinics, obviously one of probably the highest profile, with Louise Newson, Dr. Louise Newson. Everyone probably has heard of her if you're in the UK. You've got something called the Larty Lounge. There's a few others. If you look them up, some of them will actually be that you have to pay a consultation, have some blood tests done. Again, you have to question, why are you having blood tests if we're saying the blood tests aren't necessarily relevant, but that's not my business. But sometimes what they'll do is actually, once they get you to the point where they go, yeah, we're happy, that prescription can then be sent to your GP, and you can ask for it to be sent to your GP, and then you're only going to be referring through your GP each time, because 3-month reviews, 6-month reviews are really important, because like I said, it fluctuates, and you might need your levels of HRT, if that's the route you've taken, changed. The other thing I would say about the private side is that you would be able to get testosterone without too many problems if that's something that you needed, because HRT only replaces estrogen and progesterone. It doesn't replace testosterone. You have to ask for that separately. Testosterone is usually attributed to around about your low libido, your sex drive, but it's not just that. At the end of the day, it gives us it helps with our energy levels, it helps with our muscle tone, it helps with everything. So if you are on HRT, that might be something. In the UK, the GPs aren't licensed to prescribe testosterone.
Okay, that's interesting. So we're talking about sort of signs and symptoms. What are the most common physical symptoms that you get you speak about or people ask you about?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if I asked 100 people, I'd probably get top 10.
Yeah,
They don't think about all the others. So yeah, hot flushes, night sweats, increased weight, anxiety, stress. It's all around that dry skin, brain fog, low libido, like that hair thinning. And I look at that's probably your crux of your mains.
mm.
There are so many more. 70 to 80% of women will put on weight during their perimenopause phase, and that's usually because their stress levels have gone up.
It's kind of a cycle, isn't it? As in, you're tired, your anxiety is high, you don't want to go out and exercise. You also got your body's putting on weight anyway, but then you're not doing the exercise to
Yeah.
help with that either. So it's kind of
Yeah.
a
Well, to give you an example, I mean, obviously that year when I did no exercise, my whole life since primary school, so since I was in like single figures of age, right through till I was in my mid-40s, I've exercised pretty much every day because it's just my life. But that whole year, and I put 1.5 stone on. Well, it's not a surprise because I now wasn't exercising, yet I was still eating the same. And then you feel self-conscious because you put weight on, so then you change what you wear, then you look bad, then you feel that you don't want to go out, and then you become a social recluse. It can actually happen that quickly. And if you've got a partner who then says, oh, we've got a party to go to, or I'd like to go out for dinner, and you go, I don't want to go out. And then it puts pressure on a relationship. And I think for me, that's huge because it's got to be a two-person thing, or some people around you. It doesn't have to be your partner. It could be your social groups, your friendship groups, actually helping you through this time, because that vicious cycle can be really quite daunting. And that's why putting things in place to try and stop those things happening. People say to me, or originally said to me, oh, maybe you don't understand because you're a physical training instructor. You've always done sport. I said, yeah, but I lost it. I completely lost it. And I'm still not even back into it. I mean, I exercise for health now rather than training and competing. But I still find it a drag because if I'm tired, and I was meant to have I have had a hip replacement, but I was meant to have my hip replacement slightly earlier, but I was down to 1/3 of my blood in my body. 1/3 of my blood. I shouldn't have really been able to function because your body needs a certain amount. So my vital organs were okay, and obviously just enough. And the reason for that was because of such heavy bleeding, and I ignored it for 6 months.
yeah, become anemic.
Well, anemic and totally drained. And then you're still trying to say, come on, Fiona, you've got to do some exercise because your muscle mass, your bone mass, bone density is so important. And women, the 3 things that affect bone health, heart health, and brain health. I nearly forgot that then. Brain health, are affected by these hormone changes, and you've got to try and help yourself out as much as you can. And that's why having a social group, whether it's going to the local leisure centre, local scout hut, or whatever it might be, or for my programme online, it gives you that ability to jump in and out. And if you're not in, then I might send, like in my group, I'll send them a message and I'll say, oh, is everything all right? I sent somebody a message last night and they said, actually, it's been a really difficult time. And she said, oh, I'll see you in the morning. Now I know that she wouldn't have come on class this morning, but because we messaged, we just had 2 messages, that's all it took. She was on this morning and she sent me a little message and went, I'm really glad I came on. Because it can just be so much.
Yeah, just reach out. And we talk about the physical symptoms, but what are the sort of, I suppose, society symptoms? I don't know if that makes sense, but you were saying earlier about the divorce rate and, dealing with kids, dealing with life.
Yeah.
Like, what sort of symptoms do people sort of report when they're at home? Like
well, I think, yeah, I mean, obviously, realistically, if you're anxious about things or you're getting angry, like anger's like rage is a real, like literally losing, I better watch my language, but literally losing your shit over something, like, your partner's left or the kids have left a coffee cup out or they've left something untidy, and normally you might say, oh, just tidy it up or pick it up and take it, but literally people have said to me, like women have said to me and husbands have said, my wife is literally every little thing, it's like walking on eggshells. I've had a guy turn around and say to me, I've stopped going home. And I was like, well, that's not going to help. And he said, yeah, but I'm just putting extra shifts in. And I said, yeah, but is that the excuse to pay the mortgage or have an extra holiday or pay an extension or whatever. And he was like, yeah, it's exactly that. And I said, mate, I said, you're gonna get down this process and she ain't gonna be there. You're going to have such a wedge between you. And he said, yeah, but she's changed so much. I said, but have you talked to her? He was like, there is no chance I can talk to her. And and so the impact at home can be massive, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, I actually had a husband say to me, not my husband, obviously. I had a husband say to me, you've saved my marriage. And I said to him, I said, that's really sweet, because I kind of got a bit embarrassed. But he said, because we talk to each other. We started walking the dog instead of us going, because our kids are a little bit older, so they're like late teens, early 20s. And he said, instead of one of us going, oh, I'm taking the dog out, and the other one's doing whatever, we go, right, are we going to go out with the dog? Yeah. And they went out and walked around the little village where they lived, walked the dog together, had a conversation away from the house, wasn't necessarily impacted by the kids jumping in and going, no, I told you it was this we're doing, or we're going. And then sometimes they started stopping at the pub and having a pint or a glass of wine or a little. And he said, we just started talking. And I said, the problem you have is, not the problem, perimenopause tends to happen between the age of 45 and 55. Most people, if you've had your kids, at a certain time, mostly your kids are going to be late teens, early 20s. Not always, of course. Some people do have kids later. But still then there's pressure of what comes then, the logistics of young kids. But if your kids are a little bit older, they're starting to flee the nest a little bit, yet they still come back for money and they want their washing done and all that stuff. And suddenly a couple, whether it's two women, two men, or husband and wife, it's who are you as a unit? I had exactly the same conversation with somebody the other day, a lady the other day. She's actually in my current programme, and she said her son's just about to go to university, and she said, I don't want him to go too far. And I was like, because the daughter went to university but went locally because it was during COVID. And she said, I don't want him to go too far. I said, he has to go sometime. Yeah. And I said, what you need to do is start talking to, we'll call him James. It's not his name. I said, you need to start talking to James. I said, what does James think? She went, I don't know. I said, you need to talk to each other, because at some point it's going to end up being the two of you at home and you're not even going to know who each other are anymore. And it's funny because they've started once a week. They've started doing date day, where they walk either a Saturday or a Sunday. And they walk down into the town and get a pint, have a dinner. It doesn't have to be expensive, but it's about bringing that couple back together.
And this is also part of your program as well. It's not just about perimenopause and menopausal women, but it's also about like the empty nest syndrome, or when your children have left, or maybe I suppose if you've been divorced or separated, it's that, who am I? What's my purpose?
100%, Bill, and it's spot on. I mean, realistically, perimenopause, menopause, 45 to 55, average age in the UK for women going through menopause, which, just for the record, is only one day in your life, and it's after the 12 months of no period is one day, but we umbrella it as menopause. But the empty nest syndrome, the divorce, the separation, the parents or family members becoming sick and elderly potentially, maybe having to become the wills and power of attorneys for things, the pressures with siblings when there's unfortunately going through bereavements, and then you're dealing with somebody's estates, and that can be real troubled time and difficult time. And if you're having that on top of symptoms, it can be really tricky. And that's again why communication and having that understanding with partners or somebody's socially support group around you is really important.
Is there light at the end of the tunnel? Is people going to be talking to this? Because correct me if I'm wrong, this is going to happen to every lady out there. And I actually asked one of my clients, I was talking to her, and she was like, I've really been knocked sideways by this, I'm really, really, really struggling. And we sort of talked about, I think actually she came and joined your program, and I was like, well, I may have asked another client, it's like, what did your mum say about this? Did you ever talk to your mum about what was coming or what was going to happen? She's like, no. Mum never spoke to me about any of this.
No, I think that will hopefully start to change, because mums now, or even dads now who have got kids. I've got a guy at work whose wife is she's gone off completely, in his words, gone off the rails. And I've had to say to him, have you spoken to your boys about it? He's got 2 boys, aged 9 and 11. And I said, have you spoken to them about it? Because they're noticing mum's changing. And they're both working, so it's, there's lots of pressures and stuff. And it's really difficult. But if you put strategies into place, it will be okay. A woman will spend a third of her life, as long as she lives to 80-ish. If she goes through that whole process and sort of finishes around about the 50, 55 mark, she should live to 80, 85, hopefully, fingers crossed. That's a third of your life. You've got to make it good. So there's got to be light at the end of the tunnel, because otherwise because this is what a lot of people forget. They say, if you take HRT, you stop taking it. There is an increased risk if you take HRT long term as you get older. Over the age of 60, HRT does have increased risk. You need to be aware of those. Speak to, obviously, specialists so you are aware. But if you have a healthier lifestyle, if you have a good understanding and communication with your partner or the people around, whoever are close to you around you, then hopefully any symptoms that remain, because if you've had anxiety increase because of hormone changes and you don't take HRT, you're not going to have that. Still not going to have those hormones 20 years later. The estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are gone. So that's why a lot of people take HRT, because they'll go, I need to steady and level everything so that I can maintain my purpose going forward. But of course, if you choose not to, so I'm not on HRT because at the moment I feel I can stabilise the things that are going wrong, and I put things into place to reduce the chances of me really going wrong. Yeah. And if it does go wrong, like the other day, I put the washing up liquid in the fridge. I've never done it in my life. Now, some people would say, that's just a mistake. Mine's going a million miles an hour with lots of things. But it's not the first time. Lots of things are happening. And so I laugh things off. Because I think, do you know what? It's one of those things. I drove somewhere the other week. I drove about half an hour in one direction and realised I was going completely the wrong place, going to the wrong thing. I had to turn around. And of course, that's cost me half an hour of time. It's cost me money in fuel. But I was like, never mind. Whereas some people would literally let that ruin them for the rest of the day. Whereas I try to go, actually, who's going to be affected by that? I am. Whoever I'm going to go and see because I've made a mistake. And my partner's going to get it when I get home because I'm going to rage because I'm really annoyed with myself. And I just go, do you know what? Nobody's died. It's, so trying to be positive about going forward is really important. It's hard, but it's important.
So what does Midpoint for Women offer? How do you help women going through these issues? So
the 12-week program is facilitated through Facebook and Zoom. It's open to anybody that can speak English, basically, because obviously we don't have a translate option. So I've got a lady in Australia at the moment. I've got a new lady starting in the next program, is coming in from Ireland, and the rest are in the UK. So you can be from anywhere as long as you speak English. There is a timetable of every week. There's a timetable that comes out every Sunday, and at the moment there are 10 contributors plus myself. That might vary sometimes because obviously somebody might say, actually, I can't contribute anymore. They've been doing it for so long. But we have nutrition, cognitive hypnotherapy, EFT, so that's tapping. So if nobody's ever looked at that, that's a really good way of short term, in quick time, helping with stress, anxiety, or anger and rage. It's really good. But I've got the contributors. If you look on my Facebook page, you can actually see the list of contributors. You can then look them up on Instagram. Some of them do little videos, so it might help you and get an idea of what it is. EFT, we've got clothing and style specialist or consultant, hair care, skin care. Obviously, I do all the fitness and nutrition. So and pelvic floor, because that's really important. Because just so you know, pelvic floor is a muscle, just like every other muscle. So even if you've had kids and it's maybe been damaged through childbirth or the processes that involve and all that, then there's going to be potentially an issue down the line. If you have had surgery, again, there could be a pelvic floor issue. So it's not necessarily attributed to menopause. But as we age, our muscles get weaker if we don't use them. Just like your bicep, if it doesn't get used, it gets weaker. Your pelvic floor is exactly the same. So understanding, and the good thing about my program is it's a safe environment, it's 12 weeks. It's actually 13 weeks, depending whether the dates work, but you get officially it's advertised as 12 weeks, and you come in, and it's somebody in the program, the current program, put it really nicely. She said, it feels like I've had an invitation to engage in as much or as little as I want in a time frame that suits me. So she works shifts. She jumps in on something at 1 o'clock in the morning when she's on her break in where she works. She watches the hour or the half-hour session, and then she goes back to work. And she said it's just been brilliant. She said because it's predominantly delivered live, but a lot of it is recorded. Not the fitness classes because there's too many, but there's a little batch of recorded sessions that people can jump in and out if they want to engage in those. But the idea is that you can come in and out. You're in it for 12 weeks, but you don't have to show your face up. But equally, you can be very present in the group, which I think is obviously much nicer because you get much more engagement from people. The age bracket is varied right through from, I think the youngest at the moment is 35 and the eldest is 67, because we have to remember women might have a hysterectomy earlier than the average age of menopause, and so she may be going through this process as well. But it's a well-being, personal development, but based around the menopause symptoms and how we can help women in this process.
And will everyone take different things away from the program? So some people will really benefit from one aspect, and then others benefit from the other.
Yeah. So yes, 100%. And the idea for me is I keep the program really low cost, because then hopefully everybody could afford to pay to come into it. And the idea of that means that, for instance, if 50% of the program is around exercise and health, okay, and the other 50% is all the other sessions, and it's not just one session a week, it is a full timetable. So if you said, you know what, I want exercise and nutrition, then ignore the rest of it, because what you're paying for and you're getting is hugely valuable. If you said, actually, do you know what, it's more about the mental health side, the anxiety, the stress, maybe cravings, maybe sleep issues, again, you could just pick up those sessions and it would still be worthwhile doing. I say to people, look, at the end of the day, if you already have your own fitness, because people have said to me, I've got my own fitness routine. I go to the gym, I train, I play golf, or go walking, whatever. I say it's not just about fitness. That's just a portion of the program. And when they look at the timetable, if you go onto my website, it's not a particularly good website, but if you go onto the website and look at the timetables, there's a couple of example timetables. It's not just one session a week. That's what when people look at the price, they look at how much there is and then go, that can't be right. It is right, because I want people to come on and I want people to engage and benefit from different aspects. Literally, I think there's one person in this program, I know, there's one person in this program that's only done one thing, and she said it's been life-changing. Out of the whole program, one session, but she said it was worth it. She said it shattered her, and she's rebuilt herself, and thanked me for it.
Yeah, and it's things that you can learn to then take away for the rest of your life as well, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And also, the fact is once you also know who the contributors are, which is obviously on the public page, so it tells you who they are. I've got a menopause nurse in there as well, so she obviously does the menopause specialised bit. It also means that, for instance, I've got a breathwork coach, and you could follow her on Instagram. Every Sunday she does a reset, a breathwork reset. So there's opportunities to pick up from other people. You also get at the moment you get a free session of EFT, you get a free session with a cognitive hypnotherapy session contributor, you get a free session with somebody else, I can't remember, but there's additional, so even just those couple of sessions that are included. And the idea of that is because not everybody wants to come onto something that's live. So if I was delivering a live, say Paula, my cognitive hypnotherapist, delivering a session about anxiety, you might not want to come onto that live because you don't want everybody else to see it, that's where you're at. But that session's recorded so that you then watch it on your own. And if you've got a question or a query, you could then message the contributor and say, look, I've got a one-to-one due because it's as a first time into the program, you get a free session. Would it be okay if I use my first session to help with that? Mm. And then if you wanted anything subsequent, so I had a lady who was terrified of flying, and she went to America in the summer with her kids and husband, and they've never gone anywhere because she was so scared of flying. And she ended up doing a couple of sessions privately with one of my contributors to get her over the fear of flying.
Awesome. What gave you the idea to bring all these specialist areas together into one sort of package?
Because I'm not in. I can't do it all.
Mm.
I'm my specialist and expert in my bit. I facilitate really well, and I do the fitness side really well. I'm very empathetic. The fact that I've put on weight, the fact that I've got joint issues, various things, I'm aware of this for other people. Whereas it asked me 5 years ago, unfortunately, I probably would have had a completely different understanding and not been as empathetic as I am now. But I think it's important for all women to have access to this information, these contributors, and without having to pay huge amounts of money.
Yeah.
The information that you get from the nutritional therapist, you'd pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds just for her bit, where she puts it all into my program. And just so people are aware, the contributors actually currently all put the content in for free.
So
They all deliver for free.
The same amount of passion as you have for.
Yeah, they do, and they have the passion, but also they understand they are all in the same boat as well. So they have an understanding where they're at and how it's impacted them. But also the fact is it helps them. Like somebody said to me the other day, they said over the last 12 months, one of the contributors was just starting her online business. She's an ex-police officer, retrained, and she said, it's the nutritional therapist. And she turned around and said, you have helped me grow myself as a person and also my business. And I said, that's what I'm about. I'm helping women in the program. The byproduct is the partners of those people, the husbands, the wives at home, and also the contributors.
Yeah. And obviously, 5 years ago, you probably never thought you'd be doing this, would you? And
no.
You could just see the passion in your face and in your voice when you're talking about it. It's such an incredible thing to do. And obviously you've gone through that yourself, so you know how much help is needed, or how much maybe support you didn't get, but how much you want to give back to women and help them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I openly say to people, I feel like it's become my calling. I've got a full-time job, but I would give it up tomorrow. Don't quote me on that. I'd give it up tomorrow if I thought I could, and I will one day make this a full-time process, because it's that important. And obviously over the next year or two, maybe that will change. But at the moment, yes, it's a juggling. But you see, and I'm about to deliver to 350 men in groups at my work. And again, that for me, that's huge change in culture. And hopefully that will help not just them at work, but it will help them with their partners. So their wives or sisters, hopefully they can go home and say, oh, I sat through a presentation to do with menopause. I didn't realise that this is stuff that goes on. And again, that just makes for communication and hopefully going forward a change in the organisation, the policing organisation. I mean, if anybody's obviously watching this and they know other people that have contacts in businesses or schools, kids are getting it. Kids are meant to be getting it from last September in school, because again, like you said at the very beginning, how do we take this forward? I don't talk to my mum about it, but hopefully if I had a kid, I would be talking to my daughter or my son about what it is and making sure that they understand. I mean, I had a 20-year-old lad say to me, my mum just doesn't stop crying. And he said, she doesn't want to go out, she's that and the other. And I thought, this is a point that everybody needs to know this.
That's it. And, and hopefully this is helping to spread the message. But it's just so interesting to talk to yourself and then relate it to people that I know as well, and be able to say, okay, yeah, this may be, and I have suggested it to people as well. It was like, maybe go and listen to this, watch this video, or listen to this podcast. This might start to help you explain how you're feeling and what you're going through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's like, for me, I try and keep things really real, and that's the really nice thing about my program. I kind of say it's not polished, because the idea is that we can make mistakes, or we have an IT crash and we just don't know how to fix it, and we go, do you know what, I'm really sorry. We send a WhatsApp out. We don't tend to use WhatsApp, but we send a WhatsApp and say, look, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to do this again next week. We'll reschedule this. Rather than upsetting somebody and feeling that, it's so much pressure to do the presentation or whatever. It's a very relaxed atmosphere, because again, you can reduce stress. is massive in a woman's world when she's going through the perimenopause, because stress increases cortisol, increases body weight or redistribution of weight, and again, it's that into that vicious cycle. And I have to say, I mean, having done it now for nearly 3 years, it's been amazing. It evolves on every program. Every program is the same, so it repeats itself. Some people have been with me since the very start, which
over and over again.
They just because they realise, because the cost is low, they kind of go, do you know what? Each time they maybe didn't do something the first time, and then they do it the next time, or they're in for the fitness and the social side. I mean, we've got a meet up in London in a couple of weeks. Every 12-week program we try and have a meet up. I know it doesn't suit everybody. You can't get the girl from Australia over just for a meet up in London, but we try and change where we do it. So, but even if it's not, this morning I've done a coffee morning. I did a coffee morning for an hour online in the group, and it's really nice just to have an engagement with people. And it's a whole package, because I believe that perimenopause midlife challenges are all encompassing.
Yeah, and again, I've been a little bit selfish inviting you on, because obviously it helps me to learn as well, and I want you to spread that word and help everyone else out there. But also as an employer, so I employ people. We employ people in our salon, older women, but also younger women. I think it's important for us to understand that you might be dealing with employees that have got issues, or having troubles, going through this early stages, not recognizing what's going on, and we might be seeing it as like a disciplinary issue or something like that, or sickness issue. But
I mean, from an employer's point of view, obviously you have to think about what's reasonable in the adjustments. And I always say to an employer, if I'm doing a talk, like a presentation to actually people who are employing people, I will say, there will always be somebody who takes the mickey. Okay, they'll always push the boundaries on anything. Okay, and there will be women who take advantage of saying, oh, well, obviously, clearly I'm perimenopausal and I've got these symptoms and I can't do X, Y, Z. Don't tar every woman with the same brush, because we can't tar every man with the same brush. So be kind and empathetic. Look at the facts. Okay, what's been happening? How's it happened? Has she talked to you about it? And that's why having an understanding from an employer's point of view is really important. Because if you don't understand it, you don't know what she's coming to you with. Okay, and a really nice way of doing it is sit down, go for a coffee, sit down. And it might not always be easy. It might not be the simplest of things to do. Talk to me. Because if she talks to you and you show that open door, that's the start process. Then you can come to an agreement of what's suitable. Does it mean that if she's not sleeping properly and she's hardly asleep, she's going to be knackered. So therefore, is she going to come to work and do a good job? Is she going to make a mistake at work? But you can't afford to pay her if she's not going to do her job. So say, okay, is there something I can do? Okay, it might be a later start, later finish, if that's possible. Is it possible to do an admin role that maybe doesn't involve, could she work from home one day a week? I know it all depends on the industry, but it's not just one size fits all. Whether you employ 2 people or whether you employ 5,000 people, it's the same principle. You have to sit down, have that conversation, come to an agreement of where you're at, have a time frame of where you're looking at. What does she see as reasonable adjustments? What do you as the employer see as reasonable adjustments? And then try and meet somewhere in the middle. So neither party is so annoyed with the other one that there's going to become a problem. Because I don't know whether you saw it in the press this week, I think it was this week or last week, there is a female, actually was the first female to claim she won her case at an employment tribunal about not being taken seriously over menopause.
So like discrimination, I suppose.
It did come under discrimination, equality and discrimination at work. I think her boss had said, it was a company in Scotland, I think he basically said that she was talking a load of rubbish, or menopause was a load of rubbish and she had to get over it. You can't say that nowadays. But it cringed, exactly there, Bill, you cringed at the thought of saying that, because you go, you can't say that. But equally, a female can't walk in, I wouldn't go to my management and say, right, this is what I want because I've got this, this and this. It would be unreasonable. There will be some people that try to do that because they don't want to work or they want things. I mean, lockdown has probably caused quite a lot of stress to a lot of women and to a lot of employers. in general. But if women have been able to mask their symptoms because they've been at home, working from home, managing their own time, okay, they can get away with it. Now you've got to recall and go, right, you all got to come back in the office, or you've got to come into the workplace more, and they're suddenly thinking, how's it, I'm bleeding to death. I've not slept for 3 days. You know, I've got my anxiety through the roof. Their anxiety goes up more, their stress goes up more, and you end up with a mental health, potentially a high level mental health issue. And that's what we don't want. We want to avoid that. We really want to avoid that. So trying to manage the lower level would be a better option from an employer's point of view, I think.
Well, part of my plan as an employer would be, you know, signing them up to your, if they're happy to, signing them up to your program, because, you know, I'd twist my accountant's arm and say, look, it's all part of a well-being.
Yeah. I did a talk in Kent. In fact, I did 3 workshops to a charity, and the CEO said to me, would it be an option for me to offer your program to my staff if they would like to do it? I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And she went, thanks. And that was, she said it's a no-brainer, because ultimately, if they feel they're being supported, the female feels that she's being supported, the employer's looking also from an outsider's point of view that they're doing the right thing and trying to help. And if it was to go for, in all seriousness, if it was to go further down the line that she decided that you weren't doing enough to help, that would go in your favour to say, well, actually, I supported her in this venture as well. And ultimately, you get somebody that's much more willing, not just to try, but from my point of view within the programme, they would get support around anxiety, around stress, or whatever it might be. And talking it through sometimes can really, really help. And they're maybe too scared to say it in the workplace. I had somebody the other day say to me on Monday, she said, I'm scared to tell anybody because I don't want to not get promoted. And I just go, yeah, but that's got to change. The culture has got to change.
Yeah.
We can't have that cringe moment.
No, I mean, we've as a business, we've helped employees before with support, and you know, it's nice to help them, but it's also good for the business because it means less sickness.
Yeah, their sickness, and the fact with my program, because it's delivered live and recorded. So I've currently got one of your members on my program, and she, because of the nature of the dog grooming world, she can't do certain things at a certain time. But I know she's doing it in the evening, 9, 10 o'clock at night, or in the morning when she hasn't got clients. She's obviously in her, you know, grooming place, and she sits there and she watches what's been on the night before if she's not been able to do it. So, but again, she's actually one of the people that's renewing into the next program because she said, there's so much to benefit from. I want to go again. And because it's quite a low cost, it means people can do that without really feeling that they're breaking their piggy bank. And from an employer's point of view, again, it's not a huge outlay to support your female members of staff.
Yeah. Once again, Fiona, it's been eye-opening, educational, inspiring. You know, I love the passion that comes from you when you're talking about this. You can see, like you said, this is your calling. Have you gone through life thinking, what's my purpose? Or have you always had a strong sort of drive with purpose? And then
no, I knew what I wanted to do when I was a kid. I knew what I wanted to do through my life. And it wasn't until 3 years ago that I crashed and burned. I sat on the bathroom floor next door crying on New Year's Day. And I'd hit a low point. And to be doing this now, thinking where it actually started, the bathroom floor next door, it's amazing. And the fact that so many people have benefited from the program or from the chats I've done outside the program. I mean, it's never been a negative comment, and I just think that's huge. And even if nobody joins my program from watching this, that doesn't matter to me. It's about people who have learned something from this. So if you join the program, great. If you don't, then don't worry.
No, it's all about awareness, isn't it? And knowledge is power, isn't it? I'm always saying that. And obviously, we've also got to thank the power of the internet. You know, the ability to be able to spread this message and talk to so many people. So
yeah, definitely. One thing I would say is, if anybody did want to contact me, obviously, I'm assuming, Bill, you'll be able to put in the Midpoint for Women information. I'm on Instagram. I don't do it very well, but I am on Instagram. It just takes too much time away from other things that I really want to do. So I'm on Instagram, but predominantly through Facebook would be your best option. And if you want to reach out to me for the program, just drop me a message and I will happily contact you back. It's most of my stuff is done personal rather than automated, and that's because I am very personal in the way I deal with people. So I kind of keep it that way at the moment.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'll make sure all your links are put in the chat, and so people can get hold of you. And wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Take care. Thanks, everybody. Bye.